Welcome to Handmade History.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sonia.
And today we are talking about a type of embroidery called Blackwork. But first, we have some exciting news. We are doing a giveaway.
Yes, we are doing a collaboration with Melissa Galbraith of MCreativeJ. We're creating a stumpwork kit that includes a pattern, supplies, and a special handmade history article. Our goal is to bring handmade history to your fingertips. Pre-orders for the kit opened 2 weeks ago, and if you'd like to join us for a stitch along in the spring, you can find the link in the description of the podcast and in our show notes.
And to celebrate, we are giving away one of Melissa's books, DIY Embroidered Shoes. This book is awesome. It shows you how to embroider on any type of canvas shoe, like Converse and Vans. And it also teaches you how to make your own espadrille sandals, which are super cute. Melissa's specialty is beautiful botanical embroidery designs, and this book showcases her gorgeous style. There are 15 patterns for different shoe designs, and there are also 45 bonus patterns so you can design your own. The patterns include geometric shapes and designs, nature motifs like birds and bugs, alphabets, space-themed designs like galaxies, and more.
We are really excited to give away a copy of this book to one of our listeners. If you would like to enter the giveaway, you can find Handmade History Podcast on Instagram. We are at Handmade History Podcast. You'll see the giveaway post pinned right at the top, and you can comment and enter there.
And if you're not on Instagram, no worries. Just send us an email with your name and let us know that you'd like to enter the giveaway. You can email us at handmadehistoryhosts, that's HOSTS, @gmail.com. And this giveaway will close on December 1st, 2025. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
And now, on to the show. Blackwork was a listener suggestion from user Lunar Jasper on Tumblr. And I was excited to see this because I love how blackwork looks. Sonia, want to kick us off?
So what is blackwork? Blackwork is a term for counted embroidery. Cross-stitch is the most common form of counted embroidery today, and it uses backstitch, which can be used to make the designs of blackwork. We have an entire episode on cross-stitch, episode 3. Blackwork is often called a type of cross-stitch, I think because it is counted, but it doesn't include cross stitches. Instead, it has a few unique characteristics. It is typically done on linen, cotton, or even weave fabric. It can also be done on Aida fabric. It is often worked in black thread, but can be done with other colors, and usually one color is used throughout the whole piece. It's often done using double running, which is also called the Holbein stitch. It's often geometric and uses repeating motifs or patterns, and it's not often used to make scenes or images as cross-stitch usually is. It's more typically used to make a border or all-over repeating composition. However, you can incorporate images or figures or even words into the repeating motifs.
Yes, I saw a really cute pattern that was of blackwork skeletons. Today, we often associate blackwork with Queen Elizabeth, who was a skilled needlewoman and who loved to wear dresses with an all-over embroidered pattern. So-called blackwork from this time also refers to free-form embroidery done in black thread on white fabric. For Elizabethan blackwork, the color is more important than the other traits that we just mentioned. There is also a legend that Katherine of Aragon brought blackwork to England from Spain when she married Henry VIII. And blackwork is sometimes called Spanish blackwork. And a little background on Katherine of Aragon. She was born to King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella I of Spain on December 16, 1485, in Alcalá de Henares, and she was baptized Catalina. She first married Arthur, Prince of England, in 1501. However, Arthur died just a year later, and she married Henry, who became King of England. And Catherine was loved by the English people. She was the mother of Mary I, the first woman to rule England, who is also known as Bloody Mary. And I noticed that here we have another legend of a queen bringing a craft. We haven't had one in a while.
Yeah. According to the British Royal School of Needlework Stitch Bank, Chaucer described a collar decorated with blackwork. He was writing in the 1300s. This may or may not be the same blackwork from the Elizabethan era. The Oxford English Dictionary includes an inventory from 1539 in Southampton, England, that mentions what seems to be a blackwork pillow. So now talk about the Holbein stitch.
Holbein stitch is where you do a running stitch and you go like trace a line, let's say. And then you go back across the same line, but you fill in the gaps. It looks like backstitch, but it's actually the same on the front and back, which is not true of backstitch.
The Holbein stitch is likely named after Hans Holbein the Younger, a portrait artist who was part of the Tudor court in England. His paintings are known for their intense realism. He was commissioned by Henry VIII to paint potential wives, and he painted Anne of Cleves. The detail on his portraits is incredible. And you can see the stitching on his subjects' clothing so much that you can recreate and stitch it yourself.
I actually watched a video by a historical reenactor named Lynn Fairchild who did that. It was really cool.
Holbein's paintings included other types of embroidery, including the freehand blackwork we mentioned earlier.
And a bit more about Holbein. He was born in Augsburg, Germany in 1497 or 98, and he emigrated to Switzerland in 1515 and painted for several years in Basel. His paintings were often religious in nature, and he also made stained glass. However, the Reformation occurred in 1523 and in the years following, and this drastically decreased the demand for his work. And he was one of many artists who left the country. He went to England because he was friends with Erasmus, the Dutch philosopher and theologian, who was friends with Thomas More. And Thomas More became his first patron in England. And I watched a great video of a collection of his works, which are held in the Royal Collection in London. And it included his sketch of Thomas More, and there were tiny pinholes along the outline and many of the features of the painting, of the sketch. And I think that in this case, Holbein was using pouncing to transfer the drawing to his work surface for painting. We've mentioned pouncing a few times on this podcast, but it's a method of transferring images, including embroidery design. And it even inspired Thomas Edison to invent the mimeograph. You can hear that story in our last episode, Mimeographs and More, episode 23. And the earliest Holbein portrait that includes blackwork is a sketch of fellow artist Anna Meyer that he made in Germany in 1525 or 1526. And you can see Holbein stitch on her cuffs, sleeves, and upper bodice.
Embroidery that looks strikingly like blackwork is found centuries earlier in Egypt. This type of embroidery is called Mamluk embroidery. Mamluk embroidery refers to all of the embroidery done in the Mamluk period. A subset of it looked like blackwork. This embroidery had the traits of modern blackwork, including geometric designs, repeating motifs, and all-over compositions. It was often done in colors besides black. So who were the Mamluks? The Mamluks ruled Egypt for over 200 years, from 1250 to the early 1500s. During this time, Egypt was part of the Islamic Empire. The Mamluks made Egypt the most powerful and influential place in the Islamic Empire during their rule. They were neither Egyptian nor Islamic.
Yes, they're very interesting. And I thought we would take a detour and talk a little bit about the history of Egypt and the Islamic Empire. So the Islamic Empire originated on the Arab Peninsula in the 600s. For the first time, this peninsula was united under a common religion and leader, the Prophet Muhammad, and Islam. And he and his successors led conquests into neighboring countries. Arab Muslims broke up the Byzantine Empire, which at that time included Egypt. And over a period of about 125 years, Muslims conquered an empire that stretched from Central Asia to Spain. The period of Islamic rule over this vast territory lasted roughly 600 to 700 years. In 1258, the Mongols took Baghdad, which shrank the empire somewhat. And in 1492, Christians took control of Spain, which shrank it further. And I remember learning in Spanish class when we learned about the history of Spain that it took the Muslims 70 years to conquer Spain and it took the Catholics 700 years to reconquer it. And I checked these numbers and the 70 is correct. The Muslims invaded Spain from 711 to 781. However, the 700 years is inaccurate. It took them 711 years.
So Islamic military forces were powerful, united, and very successful. They took over the Byzantine Empire with only a few thousand troops. They were also smart leaders. In Egypt, for example, they did not change the system of taxation. They continued to employ local Copts, or Egyptian Christians, to collect taxes and act as government accountants, especially taking over the system that had run under the Byzantines. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, quote, there was no attempt to force or even persuade the Egyptians to convert to Islam. Muslim rulers protected Christian churches. They also did not attempt to take land from locals. The Islamic ruler Umar, who was known as the Caliph, decreed that no Arab could own land outside of the Arabic Peninsula. Instead, they made their money collecting taxes from people they ruled. And this was smart. The places they conquered were farmland, but the Islamic Arabs were nomads, not farmers. They made more money taxing experienced farmers than they would have farming themselves. So in general, the official policy of the Islamic government was tolerance.
Yes, and arts and crafts flourished under the Islamic period of rule in Egypt. The Copts, the Egyptian Christians, were known for their fine textile weaving. This included fine woven linen called kasab, along with wool and silk. And different cities in Egypt were known for different textiles. For example, Damietta was known for its fine white kasab, Debek was known for silks, Tinis was known for very fine kasab linen and was home to the royal looms, and fabric woven on royal looms could go only to the ruler and could not be sold or given to anyone else. The Arabic rulers exported these textiles across the Muslim world. They sent them to Syria and Mesopotamia in the 800s. And in the 900s, court life became an important part of the government in Egypt during the Fatimid dynasty. Julie Michelet writes in a paper about textiles at this time that, quote, "In this world of elaborate court life, the textile arts were of great importance. The members of the royal court wore complicated, elaborate garments, and there were rules about what to wear. For example, green and white were worn by, quote, men of learning. There was fur trim, gold thread, and beautiful brocade fabrics. Fabric was also imported from Sicily in addition to being manufactured at home. And royals gave honorary garments to worthy subjects. Textile manufacturing grew into a huge industry, and large workshops and warehouses were built."
There was also elaborate embroidery. Textiles were decorated with darning stitch, which is similar to running stitch, and often used to mend or darn socks. There were also motifs such as medallions, birds, animals, arabesques, which are pinwheel motifs, and inscriptions. Many of these motifs would come back in blackwork designs, but the embroidery at this time doesn't really look like what we think of as blackwork today. It's more filled in and solid and looks like cross-stitch or needlepoint, and there are a lot of curved motifs. However, it's often done in a single color or a few colors, similar to modern blackwork. And as early as the 1100s, the embroidery starts to look a lot more like blackwork, with geometric designs. There are examples of what one researcher calls, quote, regular repeats of a unit of a pattern.
And this is what would become what we call now Mamluk embroidery. So who were the Mamluks? The Mamluks were people from Central Asia. They were essentially an enslaved military force. They are often characterized as Turkish, but the Mamluks included other people as well, such as the Circassians. The Mamluks fought for the Islamic military. They were able to rise in rank and were also given military posts. Mamluks were often appointed as local leaders around Egypt throughout the Islamic period. In 1250, a Mamluk leader assassinated the Islamic ruler of Egypt and started what would become the Mamluk dynasty there. Shahar al-Dun was the first Mamluk ruler. She was a political leader, and her husband was a Mamluk general. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that the Mamluks made Egypt into the, quote, unrivaled political, economic, and cultural center of the Eastern Arabic-speaking zone of the Muslim world. And again, the Mamluks were not Arabic and typically did not speak Arabic. They were also not Muslim, but they established Egyptian supremacy in this world.
The Mamluks were an incredible force. They fought off the Crusaders from Europe, and they controlled trade with India until the mid-1500s. They defeated the Mongols, we mentioned earlier had taken Baghdad. This made Egypt a safe place for people who were escaping the Mongolian forces, including scholars and artisans. They cultivated and patronized helpful intellectual leaders of various religions. They continued to employ the Copts to administer taxes. They also allowed a class of Arabian people called the Karimis to run trade with the East. And they allowed Europeans to reside in Alexandria and trade across the Mediterranean with countries like Turkey, Moldova, and Bulgaria. And during this time, Mamluk embroidery evolved into essentially the same craft that we call blackwork today.
The University of Oxford has an enormous collection of over 2,300 Mamluk embroideries. They are held at the Youssef Jamil Center for Islamic and Asian Art, and they were collected and donated by Essie Newberry, an expert in embroidery textile preservation, who actually restored the linens found in King Tut's tomb, and her husband, Percy Newberry, an Egyptologist. These embroideries were well preserved because of the arid desert environment of Egypt. And the Newberrys also collected embroidery from Ottoman, Greek island, Balkan, Persian, Algerian, Moroccan, Syrian, and Central Asian traditions. Mamluk embroidery includes many different styles of embroidery because it technically refers to all the embroidery during the Mamluk dynasty. However, in an article about this collection, researcher Marian Ellis notes that, quote, by far the largest number of fragments is embroidered in counted thread stitches. Many later Mamluk embroideries from the 1300s and 1400s are the ones that look like blackwork. In these embroideries, only a few stitches are used, including running, double running or Holbein stitch, and darning stitch. They are often done in a single color.
During the Mamluk period, people embroidered everything. Many pieces in this collection are bands that adorned clothing. These bands could be found on tunics, the ends of trousers, girdles, belts, scarves, caps, slippers, kerchiefs, towels, and pillow covers. The Mamluks also embroidered household cloths that were used to cover things like water pitchers to keep off dust. They embroidered curtains and wall hangings, which were used to divide rooms. They also embroidered tabs that hung around tents and canopies for decoration. Most embroidery was done on cotton or linen ground or background fabric.
Yes, and I was thinking that stitching would strengthen the fabric. One of the stitches used, called darning stitch, repairs fabric. I was thinking it's kind of like elbow patches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Trendy, but also
useful.
Functional. Mamluk embroidery included a lot of geometric patterns and figurative motifs, as well as calligraphy. There were 8-pointed stars, cartouches, hexagons, rosettes, and double-pointed arrows. The 8-pointed stars look exactly like what we think of as a Scandinavian motif. Ellis writes, quote, the seemingly endless number of different geometric patterns worked on Mamluk embroidery can only be described as amazing. Sometimes designs were based on words or letters which morphed into symbols. One such symbol was used on 9 different embroideries in the Newberry collection. Interestingly, this motif also appeared in a book of motifs found in Western Europe in the 1500s.
So going back to what we talked about at the top of the episode, I don't know if it's true that Katherine of Aragon brought blackwork to England. However, Spain was part of the Islamic Empire while the Mamluks ruled Egypt, so there could be a connection there. There were also, of course, those Europeans who lived in Alexandria, and Mamluk embroidery may have spread that way or through other Europeans who visited Egypt and wrote, drew, and painted their observations of clothing. European painters Bernhard von Breyden and Arnold von Harff both visited Egypt in the late 1400s and early 1500s, and they painted Mamluk garments and textiles. Dominic Trevisan, an Italian, was sent to Cairo to discuss resuming trade after an interruption by the Portuguese, and his assistant, Zaccaria Pagan, wrote a record and detailed observations of the clothing he saw. Cesare Vesilio wrote a manuscript in 1590 that included Mamluk garments. This was called Of Ancient and Modern Dress of Diverse Parts of the World in 2 books. Ellis writes that Mamluk embroideries that included pulled or drawn threadwork elements were imported to Italy from the 1300s through the 1600s, and that these may have inspired the invention of Italian needle lace. And we have an episode on lace, number 9, A Brief History of Lace.
Although trade with Europe was good for spreading Mamluk embroidery, it also contributed to the decline of Mamluk textile production. Cheaper woolen fabric was imported to Egypt from Europe. The number of silk looms in Alexandria went from 14,000 in 1394 to 800 in 1434. However, Mamluk textiles remained precious and their prices shot up. Unfortunately, embroideries were often cut into pieces to be sold.
So it's still a question, where did the blackwork style Mamluk embroidery come from? Of course, it may have evolved from earlier designs, but it may also have been influenced by Indian designs. We mentioned that during the Mamluk era, Egypt controlled trade with India. The class of merchants who controlled this trade were called Karimi, which may have even originated as the word karyam in Tamil, an Indian language, which means business.
There is another embroidery tradition from the state of Karnataka in India called Kasudi embroidery. If you look at this embroidery, it is blackwork. Tradition holds that the practice is very old, perhaps dating as early as the 500s or 600s CE. There are literary references to Kasudi as early as the 1400s. Kasudi embroidery includes geometric motifs. It is done in stitches that are also used in blackwork.
Yes, and these stitches are called gavanti, which is the same as double running or Holbein stitch, mergi, which is stepped Holbein stitch. So basically, if you think of a set of steps, you would stitch the horizontal stitches going forward, and then on the backward pass, you stitch the vertical stitches. It comes out really nice. Nyegi, which is a running or darning stitch and can be a mix of long and short stitches, and menthi, which is the cross stitch. Traditional motifs include palanquins, elephants, and lotuses. Kasudi embroidery was traditionally done on Ilkal saris, which are saris woven in the city of Ilkal, which is also in Karnataka. It's also very common to have a temple tower design on traditional bridal saris. And Kasudi embroidery is often done in different colors, which is maybe the biggest or only difference from what we think of as blackwork.
Kasudi is very much alive and well today. In an article in the Hindu newspaper on October 27, 2006, Govind D. Belgamkar and Anil Kumar Sastry write, Kasudi is mainly concentrated in Dharwad, Belgaum, Hubli, and Mangalore. The delicate craft, which faced the threat of extinction once, has been revived, thanks to the initiatives by artisans and some non-governmental organizations. A source of livelihood for many in the Hubli-Dharwad region, Kasudi is traditionally done on Ilkal saris. Kasudi's uniqueness lies in its precise geometric design. The embroidery appears the same on both sides of the cloth. Done by counting threads of the warp and the weft, even a minor error can spoil the design. Artisans have begun to use netted cloth to make the job easy, enabling even less skilled women to do it. Poor patronage forced JSS College of Dharwad to close its Karnataka Kasudi classes 4 years ago. However, many artisans, including Manasi Joshi of Navanagar, Hubli, who won a national award for her contribution to the growth of Kasudi, conducted classes. She has trained over 1,500 women and offers jobs to 30 women.
Asha A. Savala is another modern Kasudi champion. An entrepreneur from Mumbai, she shared Kasudi embroidery across India for 30 years. She employed more than 150 women as stitchers and sellers of saris decorated with Kasudi embroidery. An article in Metro Plus Bangalore characterizes the designs as, quote, elaborate sequences of simple stitches, and notes that they, quote, sometimes number as many as 2,000 to 5,000 stitches. And it can take up to a year to embroider a single sari. People also teach Kasudi embroidery online via YouTube and Instagram, and we'll link some of these channels. But that is blackwork. Sonia, what do you think?
I also was very interested in blackwork because I do cross stitch, and so it's counted, and so I see more about blackwork. And yeah, I want to do it. I want to try it now for real. Sounds
yeah. When I learned about Holbein stitch, that is what I originally thought that backstitch was, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I knew about like all that Tudor history too. Like we talked about that before. In like different areas of Tudor England. So that's coming back. So I knew about Holbein, but I didn't realize there was like the Holbein stitch and all that. So
it is interesting. And you can see the stitches, the literal stitches in his paintings. That part is pretty cool.
And then the Mamluk too. I didn't know anything about them and their embroidery.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I had never heard of Kasudi stitch either, but they are all very much the same. Kasudi, Mamluk, and blackwork, all very much the same art.
All that trade coming back was very much like the Silk Road episode.
Yes.
All the cloth fabric being traded around and everything. And
yes. Yeah. All the complicated ways that things could spread.
Mm-hmm. That's cool too to see like calligraphy in embroidery. Yeah, because I took the Arabic calligraphy class before. And so much of the art is like geometric and with calligraphy as well. So it's cool to see that in a different medium.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I'll include some photos on our Patreon page. But yeah, it's really beautiful. Well, thank you so much for listening. Please join in our giveaway of MCreativeJ's book, DIY Embroidered Shoes. You can find all the info that you need in our show notes. And you can also participate by sending us an email at handmadehistoryhosts, that's HOSTS, @gmail.com.
If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for a show, you can email us also. Or visit our website at handmadehistorypodcast.com and find us on Patreon at patreon.com/handmadehistorypodcast. Thank you.
Bye. And today we are already? Couldn't say talk.